What's up everybody, welcome back. In today's video we're going to take a look at setting up our character selection, and this will be the result that we're going to end up with. So we're going to have a character model for every connected player in the lobby. The player's name will be in front of the character model, so you can immediately see which character belongs to you. If we go into the character selection menu, the camera will zoom in onto our character, and if we select different characters, we can also display some different information about that character. Everything will replicate, so if I would grab my client over here and select a different character on my client, then that will also replicate to the server. And I will also show you how you can make all of this stuff load into the game. So let's dive into the video. So first of all, we are going to need a few blueprints. I'm not going to spawn the actual character in the lobby, I'm just going to make a fake one. So I created a folder called gameplay lobby, and in here I'm going to create a new blueprint class, and that's just going to be an actor, not an actual character. And this is going to be my lobby character blueprint. And let's open it up. So for the components, first let's add a scene component, and I'm going to call this my root and replace the default scene root with my scene component. Then I'm going to add a skeletal mesh component, and that's going to be my character mesh. And we can assign a default in here so we can kind of see what we're doing. So let's give it our character model. For the animation mode, we want to use an animation asset instead of an animation blueprint. And then for now, we can assign an idle unarmed animation, for example. So we can see something playing in here. Now let's rotate it the same way as we have our character set up. And then we also want to add a text render component. So look for text render. And this is going to be our player name. Now let's align this properly as well. So over here on the right we can set the alignment, and I'm going to set it to center and then drag it out in front of my character. So something over here probably. And that should do it right now for the components. So we can look into the graph, and that's not going to be really sophisticated. So first we're going to create a function to set our player name. So let's create a new function and call it setPlayerName. And we're going to give it an input, and that's going to be the text value player name. So turn it into a text. And then we can drag in our player name text render component and drag off here and set the text. And simply plug, oh, not the text material, that's my bad. So look for set text and then just grab the set text node, and we can plug in the player name directly, and that's all we have to do in here. Now let's go to the event graph. So because this is going to be replicated, we are going to need some multicast events to handle everything. So we're going to create a new custom event. And the first one is going to be our multicast set player name. So for the replication, we're going to set it to a multicast event, and then we're simply going to call our set player name function that we created, plug it in, and make sure that we also pass on the variable. And then we need to do the same thing for the character mesh and for the animation that we want our character to play. So we're going to create a custom event again. And this is going to be our multicast set character mesh. So again, make sure that you set it as a multicast event for the replication. And then we're going to drag in our character mesh from here and set the skeletal mesh. Plug in the execution pin, and if we drag on the pin to the event node, it will create the variable. And for the last one, we're going to create the custom event multicast play mesh animation. So make sure we replicate it as a multicast event, and then again we can drag in our character mesh, and this time we want to play an animation. So select this node, And we're gonna make it a variable again, so drop it onto the event node and we're good to go. So this is pretty much all we need to do in here. The only thing left is go to our class defaults, and we want to make sure that we set it to replicate. So enable the replicates flag, and this is pretty important, so don't forget this. And then compile and save it, and this should be good to go. For the lobby, I'm also going to create a second actor, and that's going to be the positions for the lobby actors to spawn at. So this is going to be my lobby player spot. And let's create this as well. And this is going to be much easier. So again, I'm going to add a scene component and call this my root, and replace the default scene root with that. And then I'm going to add a billboard component so I can see where this player spot is in the actual map. And you might want to drag it up a little bit. And that's pretty much all we need to do, except add one boolean in here, and that's something like is spot used. And make sure it's a boolean. So we don't need to set it to replicate, that's fine in this case. So we're just gonna save it, and that's all we need to do in here. Now we need to make sure that in our actual lobby map, we are going to place these lobby player spots where we want the character models to spawn. So let's open our menu lobby map. And we're gonna need a viewport as well. There we go. So the player will spawn at the player start, so we want to make sure that we place our lobby characters in front of him somewhere. So let's just drag it into the map, lobby player spot. And you do want to make sure that you turn them around 180 degrees. And then you can simply paste them in somewhere, and you can adjust the locations later if needed. So I'm making a 4-player lobby, so I'm just gonna add 4 of them. Maybe put them a little bit closer together. So that should do for now. So at least we have 4 in the map to work with, so let's save this. And now we're gonna go into our game mode and set some stuff up. At this point we are in our lobby, so we're still using the menu game mode, so let's open it up. And the first thing I want to do in here is take a look at our update lobby event. So at the beginning we have a branch, we check if we want to update player names, and after that we update our player profiles first. So I want to make sure that we always update our player profiles regardless if we update the player names. So I'm going to just get rid of this branch over here, connect this up directly, and then we are still using the branch in the second for each loop, so that's good to go. Now in the first for each loop over here, I want to take a look at this add node. I'm going to remove it and replace it with a set array element node. And first I'm going to plug everything in, and then I'm going to tell you why I did this. So let's just make sure that we connect the item over here. We're going to grab the index from the for each loop and connect up the execution pin. So don't forget the cast to the player state over here. And let's enable size to fit as well. It doesn't hurt, so why not? Now the reason why I did this, this way I'm 100% sure that the index between the all connected players controllers and the player profiles will always match up. So with the add node it should probably match up as well, but we're gonna deal with controllers leaving the lobby and indexes will change and things like that. So if we set it up like this, we know that index player controller 1 belongs to player profile index 1 regardless of what happens. So just a little failsafe. Let's continue setting up the actual event. So for the update lobby event, let's add another boolean for our character selection. So character selection. And then we're going to simply add another branch to the second for each loop over here. So at the end, update level selection, we're going to add a branch, plug it in, and don't forget to plug in the false pin from the previous for each loop, from the previous branch as well. So the condition is going to come from the event node. So that's our character selection. And if we want to update our characters, we're going to need an event for that. And for that event, we're going to need a function. So let's start by creating that function, and that's going to get the available player spot. So let's create a new function and call this getLobbyPlayerSpot. And for the input, we don't need an input in here, but we do need an array in our game mode as well. So we're going to create a new variable, and that's the all lobby player spots array. So we're going to make this a lobby player spot and then turn it into an array. So first we want to make sure that we actually set up this array. So we're going to add a branch, drag in the array, and we're going to get the length of the current array. So if the length right now is 0, we still need to set up the array. So then we're going to do that. So if this is true, we want to get all actors of class. And we want to get all of our lobby player spots. And then we can store this into our array. So let's drag in a setter and plug them in. And if this is false, we already did this previously. So we have our array set up, and we can start a for each loop with break. So let's look for a for each loop break. Plug in the false pin as well as the setter. And that's good to go. Then we're going to grab all of our player spots. And we want to check if they are occupied or not. So we're going to access our isSpotUsed boolean. And let's add a branch in here. Plug everything in. So if this is false, we can use this spot. So we're going to break the array. And that means the array will stop looping and the index and the item will remain at this pin. So then at the completed, we can simply add a return node. And if we plug in our array element as a return value, then we can use that player spot to spawn our player. So this is going to be our available player spot. And this function is done. So let's compile and save. And go back into the event graph to create the actual event. So this is going to be the update selected character event. So custom event. Update selected character, and for this we do need an input, and that's going to be the player index. So that's an integer. And then the first thing we want to do is make sure to check if we already have a character spawned in the lobby. So if that's the case, then we only need to update the model and the animation. And if we do not have a character, we need to spawn it. So we're going to do this by actually assigning the variables from the character and the player spot on our player controllers. So that way, if a player controller leaves the lobby and indexes start changing, we still exactly know which lobby character and which player spot belongs to the correct player controller. So to do that, we need to go to our menu controller, and in here we're going to add two variables. So the first one is going to be our lobby character, and that's going to be a lobby character blueprint. And we are also going to need one for the player spot, so lobby player spot. So that's a lobby player spot variable. So compile this, save it, and then go back to your menu game mode. And now we can drag in all of our connected players, and we're going to get a copy from the index given by the input node. And then we want to check if this player controller already has a lobby character spawned. So we're going to get the lobby character. And we're simply going to compare it. So if this is empty, then we know we still need to spawn a model. So let's add a branch in here. And let me see, so if this is true, we need to spawn a character. So the first thing we need to do then is get a lobby player spot. So we're going to drag in our get lobby player spot function, and this returns the actual player spot. So if we're going to use it, we want to make sure that we set our isSpotUsed boolean to true. So let's do that first. Set isSpotUsed and set it to true. And then we want to spawn our lobby character. So let's spawn an actor from class. And this is going to be our lobby character. No. This one. And for the spawn transform, we can use the transform of the player spot. So drag over here and get the transform. Plug it into the spawn node, and that's good to go. Now from here we want to store this on our player controller. So we're going to get our array of player controllers again, copy and paste it over here. We can get the index from the actual event node, and then we want to set our lobby character, and we can plug in the return value from the spawn actor from class. And we also want to assign our lobby player spot. So set lobby player spot. And we can drag this off from the return node of our get player spot function over here. So that's working as well. And if we have this done, then we can actually call the multicast event on our lobby character to set the player name. And in this case, we want to make sure that we grab another one of these all connected players getters, and we want to plug in the index again. And now we can call our multicast set player name. First we need to get our lobby character, so that's my bad, get lobby character, because that's a variable on the player controller. And then we can call our multicast set player name and plug this into the last setter from the spawn actor from class, and also plug it into the false pin from the first branch over here. So if we already have a character spawned in the lobby, we only want to update the player name that's in front of the character. We're not going to worry about the mesh or the animation right now. We're going to tackle that a little bit later. So how did we going to get our player name? Well, that's not too hard. We're simply going to drag in all of our player profiles, and we're going to get the correct one by simply dragging the index from the event node. And then we can split that and get the player name from here. So split the struct bin and plug in the player name. So this should be good to go. And you do want to make sure that you get a new all connected players getter over here, because you also drag this off the false pin. So you can't use any of the setters over here to get the return node and plug this in directly, because if you use the other branch, that will not work. So make sure you set it up the same way as I did over here. Okay, so that should be good to go. Now let me have a quick look. So we want to go a little bit up into our game mode. Over here we have the event on logout. We are calling our update lobby event, and we want to make sure that we enable the character selection update. So let's set this to true. And what we could do is find all of the references to this function or event, and this will give it in this blueprint. And if we click the little binocular over here, it will search all of the available blueprints, and we're going to see that we also have a call to this in our menu controller, and that's in the server update lobby event. So that's the first time a new player enters the lobby. So in this case we also want to make sure that we update our character selection, so let's enable it in here over as well. And then I think we should be good to go. So that's all set up. Yeah, that should work. So if we compile save right now and we are going to test this, then we should have at least a model spawned into our lobby. So we don't want to load the actual lobby, we need to load the main menu. Yeah, that's fine. So let's see, multiplayer host game, and that's not working because we did place the player spots in the lobby. We need to call the actual event in our game mode, so we need to go back into the menu game mode. Oh, come on, it's over here. There we go. And inside the menu game mode, we have the update lobby event, and we did add the branch over here at the end, but if this is true, we need to call our update selected character event. And we can grab the index from the for each loop and plug it in directly, and that should work. So in this case, if we test it, we should have a model inside the lobby. There we go, and we have the player name displayed in front of it. So that's kind of working. Okay, I lost my cursor, that's nice. There we go. So the next thing we are going to do is create a few characters and take a look at how we're going to set that up. So I'm going to set up my characters using child blueprints. First of all, I've created a few materials. So I went into the material instances folder, simply duplicated them and gave them a different color. And then duplicated the mesh and assigned those new materials. So I have a few different character meshes. And now let's go into the character folder. So we have the default Hero Quinn blueprint that we just used to create all of our character functionality. And I'm going to make this my base blueprint and not actually use this as a character, but I'm going to create child blueprints of this blueprint to create different characters. So first of all, I'm going to rename this one to my Hero Quinn or Blueprint Hero Base. And then to make sure I do not accidentally select this as a character that I want to use, I'm just going to assign a no mesh in here, so I can immediately see this is not a character. So compile and save, and that should be good. Now from here I'm going to right click and create a child blueprint class, and that's going to be my first Quinn, so BP Hero Quinn Blue. No, that's double N. There we go. And then in here we could assign the correct mesh again. So let's open it up and assign the Quinn Blue mesh. And for now, I don't think we really need to do anything else in here. So let's create the other ones as well. So I'm going to duplicate it, and that's my Quinn Green. And then we got Quinn Purple. And Quinn Red. So the reason I'm using child blueprints is because these blueprints will inherit all of the functionality from the parent blueprint. So if I want to change something like a default behavior from a character, like something how weapon inventory works or something like that, I can just go into my parent blueprint and change it in here, and all the changes will affect the child blueprints as well. And if I would go into my child blueprint, I can override default behavior by simply adding that function. So for example, if I go into the event graph and I would look for an event that's on my parent blueprint, then I can simply add that event. So I don't want to call the function, but I want to add the event. And let's say I want to change the fire montage event. So if I add this in my child blueprint and add some functionality in here, then this will actually execute over the parent blueprint, so you will only get this behavior and not the behavior from the parent blueprint. So you're easily able to set up custom default behavior for a child, but it's also really simple to change default behavior for all the blueprints by just editing the parent. And in the same way, you can still access all of the variables from the parent, although they are not listed in here. So if I would right click and look for something like set my weapon variables, then if I scroll down, we actually have the active weapon index or switching weapon boolean and things like that available in this child blueprint as well. And another benefit, and that's the last one I'm going to mention right now, if we cast one of these child blueprints to the hero base blueprint, that will simply return true. So we don't need to worry about casting to all of our individual characters or things like that. We can just cast to our base character and everything will work. So that's why I'm using a child blueprint. So we have 4 characters set up, and we do need to make sure that we change the meshes in here. So let's do that quickly. So we're going to grab the green one and the purple one. I don't need to actually go into the viewport, that's fine. So let's do it like this. And the red one as well. So those are good to go. Now I want to add a structure to make our lives a little bit easier. So let's go into the blueprint section and create a new structure. And this is going to be my character info. So s_character info. And for now, we're just going to start out by setting our character mesh. So that's a skeletal mesh. And the second thing we want to add is our lobby animation. So that's the animation that we want to play in our lobby. And that's going to be an anim sequence. So over here, anim sequence, and that's the variable type. Save and close it down. And now we can create a data table. So go to miscellaneous, create a data table. And in here, we need to select our character info structure. Click OK, and that's going to be our character info table. And let's assign our characters in here. So let's add a new row, and the first one is going to be Quinn Blue. And for the character mesh, let's assign the blue one, and then we're going to pick one of the idle unarmed animations. So I'm going to start with idle break, and then we can simply duplicate it, and this is going to be Quinn purple, or let's go for green. So we're going to keep the correct order, although it doesn't really matter. And let's grab the idle ready in this case, so we can see a little bit of difference. So after green, we got purple, the purple character mesh, and there are a few other idle animations as well. So idle unarmed, and then if we go all the way down, idle break fidget. And for the last one, we have Quinn red with the red character mesh, and I'm going to use the idle break scan. So each one of the characters has a different animation in the lobby as well. So for now, this is all we're going to add in here. We can come back to this later, and I can show you why then. So let's save all and save selected. That's good to go. Now in the player profile in our saved data, we're also going to add our character row name. So let's open up the structure first. And in here, we're going to add a new variable, and that's the character row name. And that's a name variable. And if we save it and then open up our player profile SaveGame object, then in here we have the player profile, and we want to compile it so we can set the new defaults. And for the character row name, we want to pick one of the rows from the data table that we just created. So I'm going to assign the Quinn Blue character by default if we have nothing selected and saved in our SaveGame. So that's good to go as well. We have a default value set. And now all we need to do is go into our menu game mode again. So framework menu game mode. And now we can go back to our update selected character event, and in here we also have our character row name now from the player profile structure. So we can continue with the multicast events, and we can set a multicast event for the character mesh and the animation. But first let's grab the data table row name. So drag off the name over here and get the table row. And we want to get it from the character info table that we just created. Then we're going to break the out row. And from here we can grab the mesh and the animation. So let's drag off the lobby character and set the character mesh. So that's our multicast event that we created at the beginning of the video, and plug in the mesh from the data table. And then we can play the correct animation as well. So play mesh animation. And again, plug it in from the data table. So right now the lobby should have a blue character with an animation playing. So that looks a little bit different as previously, so that's good to go. Okay, so we have that set up as well. Let's continue by handling the camera movement if we go into the character selection menu. To set a new target for our camera, we need a new actor. So let's go into our gameplay lobby folder, and I'm going to create a new blueprint class, and that's an actor. So this is going to be my camera view target. And it's going to be pretty simple, but the reason we create this is we cannot use a component for a camera target, so we need to create an actor. So first I'm going to create a scene root and replace the default root, and then I'm going to add an arrow component so I can see which way the actor is facing. And that's all we need to do in here, except for going to the class defaults and make sure that we enable replication as well for the camera view target. So enable the replicates flag over here, compile and save. And now we can go into our menu game mode. So let's open up our framework, and we're not going to go into the game mode, we're going to go into our menu controller. So in here we have the UI show lobby event, and this will display the lobby, and in here we're going to add a call for the camera to change position. So let me grab my notes quickly. Show lobby, there we go. So to change the camera target, we actually need the server to call it. So you might expect the camera is handled for the local player controller, but that's not the case. So we need to make sure that we are the server. So we're going to grab our has authority switch. And if we are the server, we can simply set our view target directly. So set view target with blend, this node. And for this we can simply plug in an actor as the new target. So right now we are entering the lobby, so we want our default pawn to be our camera target, as it is by default as well. So we're simply going to get the controlled pawn for this player controller, and we can plug it into our new view target. For the blend time, that's the time the camera takes to switch positions. So I'm going to set it to something like 0.5, but you can get your own value for that as well, obviously. So then plug this into the return node, and if we are a client, we need the server to call this for us. So we're going to create a replicated event, go to the event graph and create a new custom event, and this is going to be our server set view target. And let's make it normal, because we're also going to add one for the character later. For the replication, we want to set it to run on the server, and then we can simply do the same stuff as we did in here. So let's copy and paste these nodes. Set the view target to our default pawn. And make sure that we actually call this event. So go back into the UI show lobby menu and call our server set view target normal event. So with this out of the way, we can duplicate this function and use it to display our character menu. So let's do that right away. UI show character menu. But to do this, we actually need a widget. So let's quickly create one. So we don't need to go back and forward every time between blueprints, because we haven't finished up the function. So let's duplicate one of the menus quickly. My pause menu should be fine. And I'm going to call this my character menu. And let's worry about this later. So right now we're going to get back into our menu controller. And we have our UI show character function. So first get rid of all of the lobby menu references in here. and then we're going to spawn our character menu. Now we can promote this to a variable again, so that's our widget blueprint character menu. And make sure that we plug everything in as it was before with the lobby menu. So this is our add to viewport target, and we want to plug it into the isValid node as well. And now for the view target, let's get rid of the control pawn, and this time we want to get the view target from our lobby character. So we're going to drag in our lobby character blueprint, but we need to add our camera target to that. I actually forgot, that's my bad. So let's close this down for now, go into our lobby folder and open up the lobby character. So we're going to add a new component, and that's a child actor. And let's call this our view target. So we can set the child actor class to our camera view target blueprint that we created. So camera view target BP. And then in the viewport, you want to make sure you line it up. So I'm just going to face it right in front of the character, a little bit higher maybe, and then aim it a little bit downwards. So minus 180, point it a little bit down, and something like that should be fine. Oh, there we go. So now that we have the child actor in place, we're going to go back into the menu controller, and from the lobby character we can get this component. So let's get our view target component. And we need to get the actor because we still can't plug this into our set view target with blend. So right now we're going to get the child actor, and this will actually return the actor blueprint. So now we can plug it in as a new view target, and that should work. So all we need to do now is make sure that we have a replicated event for the clients as well. So let's make sure that we copy this and now go back to the event graph, paste it over here, and create a new custom event, and that's our server set view target character. And I can't spell, but it doesn't really matter. So let's go and make this a replicated event to run on the server and plug it in, and go back into the character UI show character function and call it in here. Set view target character and plug it in. So this will make sure that the character will switch positions if we go back and forward between the menus. And now really all we need to do is create the actual character menu. So let's start building our widget for the character menu. So we just duplicated it, so let's open it up. First of all, let's change the actual title, so that's really easy, character, and we're good to go. Now we just want to add a few buttons for each character that we can select, and we need one button to go back into the previous menu. So let's grab this resume game button, and I'm going to use this for my Quinn Blue character. So let's change the text first, Quinn Blue, and change the actual button name, so button character blue. And let's duplicate this 3 more times. So we have 4 characters, and we have Quinn Green, Quinn Purple, and Quinn Red. And we need to update the text as well, obviously. So we got red, purple, and green again. That's good to go. So we can get rid of one of these buttons. We only need one more, and this is going to be my back button. So button back. And for the text, that's going to be simply back as well. So that's good to go. Let's grab this border over here, click size to fit, so it will wrap around the buttons nicely. And for now, that's all we need in the designer. So let's compile. We get errors because we have stuff in the graph from the pause menu. So let's get rid of the entire graph. And we don't need the GameInstance reference as well, so we can get rid of that. And let's start building up our event construct. So I'm going to grab my notes quickly. Here we go. So let's look for construct. And the first thing we need to do is make sure that we know which button belongs to which character, and we're going to use a map for that. So let's create a new variable, and I'm going to call this my button map. And I'm going to change it to a name variable and then change the type to a mapping. And then this will add a second variable type, and for this I'm going to select a button. So you can think of a map something like an array, but instead of it having indexes, you can assign two variables and it will pair them together. So we can look for a player name, and this will return the button that belongs to that player name. So all we need to do is set this up manually. So we're simply going to drag in our button map in here, and then we're going to add an element to it. And for the button, we can use the variables that we got from here. So we can plug in our character button blue, and then we can simply use the character row names from the data table. So this is going to be Quinn blue, and this will tie the row name to that button. And we can do the same thing for all the other buttons as well. So let's duplicate it 3 more times. And then we want to set this up for the green, purple and red character. So green, oh really? So green, purple and red. And we have the green, purple and red row names. And we do want to make sure that we actually use a capital B in here, otherwise this won't work. So just to make sure, we are referring to the data table that we created over here, and we're using these row names. So you want to make sure you actually use the exact same names as in the data table. So we have the button set up, and we're going to clean this up a little bit. So let's add a sequence node that looks a little bit better. So we want to make sure that we can change the color of the buttons if we have a character selected. So first I'm just going to drag in one of the buttons over here, and I'm going to grab the current style of the button. So get style. And I'm going to save this structure as the default button style. So promote it to a variable, and that's my default button style. Plug this into the one pin over here, and then I also want to have one for an active button. So I'm going to duplicate it, and that's my active button style. Drag in a setter for this as well, and if we have the setter, we can drag off the variable in here and make a button style. And then we can drag off the normal button style, and we can make a slate brush. And from the slate brush again, we can drag off the tint, and we can actually make a slate color. So that's what we want. I'm gonna assign the color to green. So if we have this character button pressed, it will turn green. So let's collapse all of this stuff. And that's fine. So that's our active button style saved as well. And now all we need to do is set everything up for when a player enters the lobby, so that will actually activate the button for the selected character and things like that. So to do that, we're going to get the player controller that belongs to this widget. So we're going to get our owning player, and this will return the player controller. So from here we can cast to our menu controller. Let's hook it up. There we go. So from the menu controller, we can get our player profile structure. So let's get player profile. And inside the structure, we have the character row name stored for this player. So we can use this character row name to find the button that we need to change. So we're going to drag in our button map, and from here we're going to find, plug in our character row name, and then we can hook up a branch to make sure that it actually found a button. And if it did, this will be the button that it returns, and we can make some changes to it. So first we're going to set the style, and we're going to set the style if this is true and set it to the active button style. So this is the character that's selected in the save game of the player. So if we enter the menu, we want to make sure that we have the correct button lit. And then again, I'm going to drag over here and disable the button so I can't press it again. So set is enabled and set it to false, plug it in, and that's good to go. So that's our event construct. Now we can set up the back button as well. So if we go to the back button, we're going to add an onClicked event. And we want to make sure that we display our lobby menu again. So if we grab our menu controller, so let's just make this a variable to save some work. So we're going to right click and promote to variable in here. And make sure that we hook it up. So now that we can access that as well, let's drag it in for the back button. And from here we can call our UI show lobby menu. And then we want to remove the current widget from the parent. So let's remove from parent, and we want to remove ourselves. So that's fine. And all we need to do now is set up the button for the characters, and we're going to create a function for that. So I'm going to switch my notes quickly. So let's create a new function in here, and that's character button pressed. And first of all, we're going to add a row name. So let's add a new variable, and that's our character row name. So that's a name variable. And now we need to change some buttons again. So if we click a new button, we probably have a character selected as well, and we need to disable that button so it's not green anymore. So we're going to do that first. And we need to get our menu controller for that. From the menu controller, we're going to get our player profile. Player profile info. And from here again, we're going to get our character row name. So split the struct. And for the character row name, we can find the button that belongs to the character we have selected now. So let's find it, plug it in, and let's get a branch to make sure we're not dealing with empty results. And then we can set this default, we can set this button style to default. So set style, and we want to set it back to the default style, plug it in over here, and we want to make sure that we enable the button again. So set enabled and set it to true. There we go. And now we want to make sure that we make the button that we just clicked green. So we're going to grab this button map, and we're going to find the button of the character row name input, plug it in here. Again, add a branch to make sure we're not dealing with empty results, and we can plug it in over here to the false pin as well. And then we're going to do pretty much the same thing. So let's copy this and paste it over here. But this time we want to set the active button style. Oh, not like that, but more like this. And we want to disable the button and make sure that we plug in the target from the map node over here. And after we did that, we need to make sure that we save it onto our save game object. So for that, we're going to go back into our menu controller and create a new function. So let me compile and save it for now. Close it down and go back into our menu controller. So let's create a new function in here, and that's going to be save selected character. Again, we're going to give this event an input, and that's our character row name as a name variable. And then the first thing we want to do is update our player info structure. So let's drag it in here, and let's make a setter for it. And we can split the struct pin over here. So for the character row name, we want to plug in the character row name from the input, and we also want to grab a getter from the player info structure, split that, and we're going to grab the current player name to plug it in here, so the player name transfers. It doesn't get removed or gets reset. We want to make sure that we use the player name that's already in here. So we have the structure updated, and now we need to create a SaveGame object in this player controller as well. So first of all, let's create a SaveGame object. And we want to create our player profile SaveGame. And then we want to make sure that it's valid or not. So we're going to grab an isValid node. We only need to create this once. And for the create SaveGame object, we're going to promote it to a variable, and that's my SaveGame player profile. So now that we have this as a variable, we can plug it into the isValid node, just like this. And then we can store the player profile on our SaveGame object. So we're going to drag in our SaveGame object again and set the player profile that's on the SaveGame object. And we're going to set that player profile to the information that we have stored on our menu controller. So we're going to grab a getter from that and plug it in here. And after we updated it on the SaveGame object, we want to make sure that we actually save it. So we're going to drag off the SaveGame object and call our SaveGame to slot. And now the only thing we need to do in here is make sure that we use the same slot name as we used in our GameInstance, for example. So we're going to go back into our shooter GameInstance, and in here we have load save profile. And we are using a slot name, and we want to make sure that this is the exact same slot name as we use in our menu controller to load it again, or save it again, sorry. So I'm just going to plug it in like this. I'm not going to create a variable for now. That should work fine. After we did this, we can call our server update selected character event. So let me see. Oh, we need to create an event, so that's why I can't remember. So let me see. For this, let's take a little step back and open our menu GameMode. And in the event graph, we have our update lobby event. And if we call this, we actually update the character for all the connected players. And in the case that simply one client or one player changes his character, we don't actually need to update all of them. So I want to create a second function in here to be able to update one character model as well. So how are we going to do that? Let me grab my notes quickly as well. So we're going to create a second event in here, and that's called update character for controller. So let's create a custom event, update character for controller. And this needs two inputs. So one of them is the player controller. So that's controller. And that's our menu controller variable type. So menu controller. And then we also need a player profile structure. So I'm going to add a second input, and that's my player profile. And that's a player profile structure. There we go. So if we have a controller in here, we can drag in the all connected controllers array, and in here we can find the correct controller. So we're going to find an item and plug in the controller from the event node, and the index that this will return will correspond to the index from the player name profiles array, because we made sure that the indexes match up over here using the set array node that I explained at the beginning. So over here, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our all player profiles, and we're going to set an array element to override the information, plug it in here, and we're going to set it to the information that we're going to get from this event. So we're going to plug that into the item, and for the index, that's going to be the return of the find node. And let me see. After that, we can simply call our update selected character event. So update selected character, and we can also plug in the player index from the find node. So that's why we need the separate event to get the correct index for the player. Okay, so we have this event set up. We're going to compile and save, and then we needed to go back into our menu controller. And in here, we're going to create an event so the server can update my selected character as well. So let's go into the event graph. And again, let's create a custom event and call this server update selected character. So we need to make sure this is replicated to run on the server. And we need a player profile as an input. So I'm going to grab a setter in here, plug it in, and make sure that we create a variable for it. And after we did that, we want to get our game mode and call our update character for controller event. So let's grab this to get our game mode. And then we can call update selected character for controller. And for the player controller, that's a reference to ourselves. And the player profile structure is the one that we have stored in here, so we can plug it in like this. And now that we have this event in place, we can go back into the save selected character function. And to make sure I'm not screwing up, I'm going to grab my notes. So we can simply call this event for the server to update the selected character. So server update selected character. And we want to plug in our player profile info again. And then we are done in here. So grab a return node and that's good to go. So we are the menu controller. We can be either server or a client, but we have a replicated event in here that's replicated to run on the server. So if a client calls this, this will end up on the server, but if the server calls this, this will work as well. And from here, if we are a client, we are passing on our player profile structure to the server. So the server will store it on the server side player controller as well. And then we are going to go in our menu game mode and we're going to update everything with the correct information. And when we arrive in our menu game mode, we also are the server. So in here, we don't really need to worry about replicating these events because we are the server in this game mode. And we made sure that the lobby character actor is actually set to replicate. So if you forget to set that flag in the lobby character, the replication won't work and you need to start messing around with multicast events or things like that, but that's not how you want to handle it. Okay, so we should have our character menu pretty much set up. All we need to do is make sure that we can actually go there. So if we go into our widgets again and open up our lobby menu, and let's add a button to open our character menu. So I'm just going to duplicate my start game button for now. And I'm going to drag it out of this border. Plug it in over here. So if I right click on this button, I can wrap it with a new border. And let's make sure that I'm going to set the same color as the other ones. And then I'm going to size to the content. So for this button, this is my character menu button. And let's change the text in here. So select character. Something like this. So if we go into our graph, then we can add an on-clicked event for this button. So, oh, I thought I changed the name. Compile, so we have the text as a variable, we don't need that, so let's disable that. And we want our button character menu, so go to the graph, okay, add an on-clicked event for this. And we simply want to get our controller, but we don't have a variable for that yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our owning player. and we're going to cast that to our menu controller. And once we are at our menu controller, we can simply call our UI show character menu event function. And then we want to remove the lobby menu from the parent, so remove from parent, and that's going to be ourselves. And that's good to go. Okay, so at this point, hopefully the character selection should work, and all we need to do later is make sure that it actually loads into the game. So let's make sure that this is working right now. So I'm gonna host a game, and I don't have the correct net mode selected, so everything is messing up. I want to play standalone. Host game. So let's see, we have the default character with my name in front of it, so that's good. If we go to the character menu, the camera zooms in. If I go back, it zooms out, so that's working. If I select a different character, nothing happens, and that's pretty reasonable because we didn't add those events. So let's go back into the character menu, into the graph. And we need to add the on-clicked events for the character buttons. So the blue, green, purple, and red. And for each one of these buttons, we simply want to call our character button pressed event and make sure that we enter the correct row name in here. So this is going to be Quinn Blue. And then we can copy and paste this and make sure that we change the names. So we have Quinn Green, Quinn Purple, and Quinn Red. Okay, fingers crossed. Let's see if this is working. Multiplayer host. Oh, that's freaking nice. Okay, so it's not actually working. Okay, I'm gonna dive in here quickly and get back to you guys. Okay, we didn't actually finish our character button pressed event. So in the character menu, we have the character button pressed function, not event. And we want to make sure that we wrap this up. So I'm gonna grab my notes quickly. And in here, we want to call our save selected character function. And we started creating that, and that's why I got lost. So let's grab our menu controller and we're gonna get our save selected character function. So we need to call this if this is false or if we came from the true pin. And in here we can simply grab the character row name from the input and plug it in. That should work. And now I think this might actually be good to go. So 3 times the charm as usually. Multiplayer host, select, and that seems to be working a whole lot better. Okay, so let's grab a client in here as well, and let's see if all of this stuff is replicating. So let's change my name. Multiplayer, search game. So we have 2 characters, we have a different name. Let's see if I can pick a different one. And that seems to be working as well. Okay, so we have all of this pretty much done. Now let's make sure that we actually load into the game with the correct character as well. So to get all of this stuff in game, we are going to add a variable to our saved data player profile. So let's open the player profile structure and let's add a variable, and this is our character class. So character class. And this is going to be an actor class reference. So look for actor, but this time select a class reference. So compile and save it, and then close it down. Now let's see, do we want to set a default? Why not? So let's open our SaveGame player profile, compile it so we can set a new default in here, and we want to set it to our blue character, so that's Quinn Blue, so both of these match up. Compile and save again and close it down. So we have this in our structure. So if we go back into our menu controller and go into the save selected character function that we created at the beginning over here, we want to make sure that we pass on this class as a variable as well. So let's drag it onto the save selected character node to create the variable. Compile and save it, and then we can go back into our menu character widget. So open this back up, go into the graph, and now we have this variable over here that we want to populate. And let's make sure that I grab the correct value. So we're going to actually pass this on to the input node of this function as well. So drag it all the way to the beginning, drop it on the node, and then go back into the event graph, and we want to assign the character classes here manually. So let's compile and let's set them up. So that's Quinn Blue, Quinn Green, Quinn Purple, and Quinn Red. And that's good to go. So now that we have that set up, if we press a character button, it will pass on the class to the save selected character function over here. And this will actually save it on our player profile SaveGame. So what we can do next is go back, or not back, but go to our shooter PlayerController. So right now we are crossing the line between menus and the actual game. So we're not using our menu controller anymore, but we're spawning into the game and we're using our shooter PlayerController. And what we want to do in here is make sure that if begin play starts, we're going to load a save game with our player profile structure. So let's look for our event begin play in here. Let's see, that should be over here. And in here we want to load a game from slot. So let's just continue from the event begin play, and we're going to load game from slot. So again, we want to make sure that we use the same slot name as we started out with in the game instance. So let's grab the slot name from here, copy and paste it. And from this save game object, we can cast it to our player profile, save game object, and from here we can get our player profile structure. So get player profile struct, and then let's just store this on our player controller as a replicated variable. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna promote this to a variable, and that's our structure player profile. Make sure that we set the replication over here to replicated, and then we need to check if we are the server or not. So we're going to grab a has authority node. If we are the server, we can simply set it ourselves, and this will replicate to the local controller as well. And if we are a local controller, let's make sure that the server does this for us. So we're going to create the custom event, server set player profile. So make sure this is replicated to run on the server, and then we can use the player profile to create the variable for us, plug it in, and call this event over here. And make sure that you plug in the variable as well. So that should be good to go. So this means if we load our shooter player controller, immediately it will load the save game before anything happens. So then we can go into our shooter game mode, and in here we're going to override an event or a function, and that function is get default pawn class for controller. Double check, no, spawn default pawn 4. I'm sorry. So we're going to override this event. So if you select it, it's going to create it for you, and you're going to override the default behavior in here. So let me grab my notes quickly again. So it's going to pass on a player controller from here. So what we can do is cast to our shooter player controller. And on this player controller, we actually have our player profile loaded. So we're just going to get our player profile structure. And we can break the structure over here. And in here is the character that we have selected. So then we can simply use that to spawn our player character. So let's continue in here and spawn an actor from class. Plug in the class from the structure over here, and then for the starting location you want to get the start pod from the input node, and we're gonna get the transform, plug it into the spawn actor from class, and then you want to make sure that you plug in the return value into the return node, otherwise this won't work. But we need to cast it to a character, so we plugged in a variable in here, so that's why it doesn't know what's coming out over here. So we're going to cast it to our base character, and that way we can use it for all of our child blueprints as well, and then we can plug it in, and that should be good. So this should make the correct character class spawn for each player controller. So let's save it, and we can have a little test over here, so let's do it. So this is actually somewhat working in editor mode, but you need to keep in mind that this will load the same data for both the client and the server from the same SaveGame object, because this is just a test in editor mode. And for that reason, the last character that you selected, either with the host or the client, that doesn't matter, that character will be loaded for both of the players. So for example, if I would load my green character for the client, so why is my client not popping up over here? Oh, I'm doing 2 host sessions, that's nice. So let's search for a session. So we have a green character and a red one, so if this client would select the purple character as the last character selected, and then the host would start the game, then both of them would spawn with the purple character, because that's what's saved in the SaveGame object. So that's how we use the SaveGame object, and we can actually also use the PlayerState, and if we use a PlayerState, we can actually spawn everything correctly in a standalone game. So it's really not too hard. If we drag off our player controller over here, then we can simply cast it to our shooter player controller. No, we don't even need to do that. We can simply get our player state directly, because that's a default variable on all player controllers. And then we do need to cast this to our shooter player state. And on here we also have a player profile stored, so we can simply get the player profile structure again. And if we split this, this will return a character class as well. And if we use that and hook this up like this, then we can actually test in a standalone game and everything should work. So let's make sure we have everything saved, and now let's run a standalone game. Come on, you can do it. So multiplayer, a host game. Oh, come on. And then we're going to change the name over here, and we're going to search for a lobby. So there we go. And we have 2 characters in our lobby. So let's select a character for the server and make it the green one. And then for the client, let's select the purple one. Now we do want to make sure that we enable our seamless travel, so we can actually use the player state. And now if we launch the game, this should actually work. And obviously it doesn't. Okay, so let me dive into that quickly. Okay, I don't think this is an actual bug. I still had the play in editor launch pin linked over here, so that's my bad. So let's just take a look at another standalone game. There we go. So let's host a game, and then we're gonna grab our client over here, change our player name, and let's search for the session. Okay, so purple and a blue character. So this is going to be my red one, and let's change this into the green one. Seamless travel enabled, and hopefully this works. So there we go, a red and a green character spawn in. We have correct player names, everything is working as it should. So it's been a long video again. I'm sorry guys, but I just can't do this any more quickly, and I do want to make sure that I explain everything. So hopefully you enjoyed it and you'll keep coming back for more videos. Thanks for watching. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back for more later. Bye bye.